Right, we're ready to go.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Lynn Lawson. I'm Vice President of the Board of Trustees of the Estes Valley Library District. This is the November meeting of the Board of Trustees and also the second public budget hearing for the 2022 budget. Members present besides myself, Peter Johnson, David Hemphill, Beth Ellis, Kay Weston, Annie Finley representing Friends and Foundation, Cindy Seckman, Claudine Perot, Joanna Stensland from the library staff. Absent is John Kruger, who's out of the country, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:31. First, Claudine, are there any public comments related to anything other than the public budget hearing?
No, Lynn.
Great, thank you. First on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the meeting minutes from October 18th, the income and expense report for October, and the budget hearing minutes from the November 4th public budget hearing. I think the first step is, can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to accept, or I'll second.
Okay, Peter, you can move second.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. And I'll second.
David second. Is there anything that someone wants to remove or discuss from that consent agenda? Okay. No changes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That the consent agenda is approved unanimously. Next on the agenda is the, pardon me, the second of two public budget hearings for the 2022 budget. I'm going to turn that over to David Hemphill as treasurer.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. You'll get to hear me read from our protocol, so sit back and enjoy. As treasurer of the library's governing board, I am calling to order the second of two public hearings for the Estes Valley Public Library District 2022 proposed budget. The library board of trustees will approve the 2022 final budget on Monday, December 13th at 6:30 p.m. We know that there are some members of the public who are really concerned about specific services to things like school-age kids, and others may be more interested in more books, while others are focused solely on the political balance and programs and collections. We may not all agree, but we do all care deeply about the library and how it can best benefit our community. So with that, I will say that we want to make sure the tech works, because we are doing our virtual meeting tonight. The steps are clear and that we can see your name on the screen, because we want to hear from you. Members of the public who would like to comment on the proposed 2022 budget are encouraged to do so at this virtual meeting or by having emailed or called prior to this meeting. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. When making a comment, please introduce yourself with name and address. The board will listen, but may not comment, and no action will be taken during the time period. However, the full board may give direction to the staff following the presentation. To the overview of the budget, we are still using what is version 2, B2 of the budget. After tonight's discussion of version 3 will be produced and be available for comment prior to the December final hearing or final vote on the budget. The budget has been announced in both newspapers and posted on the library website. The numbers are for total revenue, $2,500,472. Total expenditures are $2,377,993. Expenditures are divided into two categories: services and support. Services include circulation, youth, adult, and technical expenses, and total $1,421,673. Support includes administration, billing, and capital expenses, and that total is $956,320. And at this point, I will invite Claudine to give an overview of any updates to the proposed budget since the hearing.
Thank you, David. Per your request at the first hearing, I think I have nothing to add to the work that our accountant Cindy Seckman has put together. She might touch on version 2, highlights relative to 1, and we might talk about the steps afterwards to the next version before approval. So David, Treasurer David, with your approval, I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Fully approved. Cindy? You're muted, Cindy.
Did that myself. I apologize. Thank you. Version 1 and version 2 are very close. The very few changes. Hang on. I really apologize. Give me 1 second. I lost my page. Why we need 2 screens. Okay, the difference it says between version 1 and version 2, there was a little bit, very little added actually, a little bit on building maintenance and supplies. The biggest change is the front doors. We had in the budget to replace our front automatic doors. That was in the audit we received, the facilities audit that said that that should be done in 2022. We had them inspected and they're in good condition. They do not need to be replaced. That was great news. They just needed to be serviced, which we had them serviced, and we signed up for annual service and maintenance for $500 a year. So the cost to replace those doors was $15,250. That does not have to be spent on capital. So what we did with those funds was to move it to most of it, a good portion of it, to partially the building maintenance, partially to supplies, and partially to staff development related to equity, diversity, and improvement or inclusion, which is one of our main strategic goals for 2021 and 2022, 2021 through 2023. So funds just moved a little bit. The difference was only about $1,800. And those were the only changes from version 1 to version 2. Both versions are on the website.
Okay. Any further comment on that at this point, Cindy? We will get into some of the other changes we discussed and we'll incorporate during the board discussion, but any further you need to talk about right now?
Not in the numbers that are currently in version 2, no.
Okay. Thank you for that update. I will ask if there is any public comment, whether there's anyone waiting. Was there anyone emailed or called prior to the meeting? No one, Claudine, okay. Thought maybe we would tonight with this, and we were actually prepared to do this virtually for the first time. So, okay, well, with that, I will declare that the budget hearing is now closed. Comments from the public will continue to be received until Monday, December 13th at 6:30, at which time the final 2022 budget will be presented to the board for adoption and appropriation. So at this point, we can have any discussion with the board. I will, Sydney, I will be asking you, we had like 3 things that were all relatively minor. One was the 2% for collections, and I believe there's some discussion on that. And there were 2 other items, if you could remind me of what those were.
I remember one of them. I only had 2 on my list. One was the 2% for acquisitions, and the other one was the suggestion to put some funds in for recruiting, because we're finding this year what we had budgeted, even just for ads in the Noops paper for help wanted, we have gone over budget on that. We did not plan on this much turnover. So there was a suggestion that we should have an amount in a recruiting budget, and I do believe we are in conversation again with the firm that did our compensation study to get some ideas from them on what that might look like.
Was there any decision on what kind of number to put in for the recruitment number for the budget?
Not at this time, no.
So, Claudia, is that something we need to discuss at this point?
I think it's a good idea to do so, David. We've learned a couple of minor things that once you hear them, they seem so very obvious. But we're going to look at what we spent this year, plus about 10%, just in terms of recruiting folks. We're finding that some libraries and some government agencies are providing moving costs. That is a pretty significant thing, but finding housing, of course, would be more significant, but it's just giving you a heads up of what we're hearing from our peers. The third is another obvious one, which is some libraries have, what was the term I used today, Cindy, with referral bonuses. If there is, if one staff member refers another staff member who is hired, A, and then stays, B, there is a bit of a procedure to compensate them for the referral. So Beth really did open the door for me on this one, and we won't be reckless in our padding, but there will be an addition, David, to account for some of those possibilities.
Okay, but we're still not talking major numbers at this point. Okay. And also the 2% increase for acquisitions was on the order of about $5,000, $5,100 approximately. Again, not insignificant numbers, but not significant compared to the overall budget. And then has there been any further updates on the insurance with the open enrollment period or anything like that? Any changes in those numbers yet?
Open enrollment just ended at 5 o'clock today. So I will hear about changes maybe later this week, but might be into next week before they can get that all sorted out and get the information to me.
Okay, but you'll update that whenever you get that information and go from there.
Absolutely, you bet. Yes, I don't expect big changes, but you just never know.
Yeah. Well, I think the gist of what we're talking so far from the Finance Committee's perspective is there are some minor changes, and the ones we discussed in the last meeting, especially the 2% acquisitions and the recruitment budget, I think are obviously good ideas, but let's have comment from any of the board. Does anyone want to start off, or should I go around and talk to? Don't see anyone jumping at it, so let me go ahead and start in my upper right-hand corner. Pete, anything you want to comment on what's been said or add?
Only just a suggestion to Claudine, I'm sorry. I don't know why I have that mental block about Claudia. I must have known some Claudias or something in the past. Anyway, Claudine, I would suggest use lump sums if you get involved with moving costs. It gets really complicated with the IRS for people.
Oh, thank you.
But lump sums help with that. So that's about it.
Thank you.
Well, let me ask a side question on that for Cindy. Is the payroll service library use, are they capable of, because moving costs can be a taxable event, and possibly be on a W-2. Is that something the payroll can handle too?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I would think so, but
we can figure that out, definitely.
And they can still, even if they use lump sums, they can still use it as a deduction. They just have to keep receipts and records.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Beth, you're next in my rotation here.
Just about to sneeze. Thanks for catching me.
Okay, we can give you a moment.
No, it's perfect. And maybe Claudine, you were gonna speak on this later, but you had mentioned something about Kathleen having a great idea about how to use that 2% for acquisitions. I was just curious about that.
So pleased that you asked, because I'm prepared to answer that, Beth. That's the good news. Kathleen sent an email saying she consulted with the team and they plan to use the increase the number of items a patron can check out per month from the digital collection. You might know that there is a 5-item limit. And so with the rise in digital circulation, she said this means more people can have more items out. So that's her solution. And I said, thank you, will do.
Is that feedback you received that people are requesting to be able to have more? Okay.
Yes, and I think she says this serves adults, teens, juvenile patrons with books, audio, music, television, movies, and also graphic novels. And it's a real sales pitch, and kudos to Kathleen. An increase to this line item will benefit all our patrons who use digital in our library community across all ages, reading, listening, and viewing levels. The end. Thank you, Kathleen.
That's a pretty comprehensive statement.
She's...
All right. Thank you for clarifying that, Claudine. It sounds like a good possibility for a good idea on that. So was that all you wanted to say on these, Beth?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Lynn, I'll move to you. And you are muted, it looks like.
I am. I'm not now. Yeah, Beth asked the question that I was wondering about, but that's a great solution, Claudine, because I think it was Kay who recently said to me that she runs into that 5-item limit. So that's
It's very
wonderful.
important for me to say right now, I was not individually influenced by one trustee.
No, I did not mean to suggest that.
That is Kathleen working on her own. But
Yep,
I'll pass back your approval to Kathleen.
And the other thing I'd say is the idea of like referral bonuses is a great one. You know, I don't know what the right amount is to incent staff and, you know, get them to dig through their mental Rolodex, but that's a great idea.
Yep.
And Claudine, is that intended to be ongoing going forward, or just during this next year where you're expecting challenges, you know, with hiring?
I wouldn't see a reason to stop, Pete. It seems like something worth adopting in perpetuity. And maybe someday we'll be so stable, so doggone stable, I'll come to you and say, we got to get rid of that excessive program. But right now it seems like I'd like to hold on to it indefinitely.
But even if it finds you a person 30 days sooner,
right,
that's money well spent.
I would agree. Cindy and I were with Joanna under discussion. It's all over the place how different people manage it. And so we'll find the sweet spot for ourselves. As you can imagine, in a corporate environment, they're quite high. In a government, they're a little lower. So we'll have a solution for you shortly.
Great.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Claudine. Thank you, Lynn. Kay, you're next in line.
The only comment I had is I love the idea of referrals. Been involved in them. It's not only get people faster, usually they're better quality, and it's also really good for your existing employee.
Thank you.
So great idea.
Well, it all comes back to Beth with her Socratic suggestion at the last meeting, and we'll keep pursuing it. Thank you all.
Okay. If that's all you wanted to say, okay, thank you. And Anne, do you have anything you'd like to add tonight?
No, I just like to mirror both Beth and Kay and everyone who thinks the referral. We used it in the operating room a lot, and it was very effective. And just a second, what Kay said, you usually get somebody who's pretty solid because they have their friend right there recommending them, so it makes a big difference. So yeah, I just got it. And the acquisition too, because I run into the same problem Kay does. I want to rent more than 5 books, so.
Okay. Well, okay, thank you, Anne. And I will add, I agree with the general comments here on both those issues. So I think we're pretty much in consensus on those to be added to the version 3 of the budget. Do I, at this point, Claudine, is that a trustee directive to Cindy to incorporate those, or do we need anything further than that?
I think I'm hearing general consensus, and it falls on the staff to report back with another version that you can accept or reject and make edits as a full board. So I think we have your direction informally. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we've heard from everyone here tonight, and I think we're good to go from this point on with just logistics from here of getting version 3 of the budget ready to go and approved in December and to the appropriate authorities timely. So, okay, well, I think that takes care of our second budget hearing, and I will turn it back over to Lynn.
Great. Thank you, David.
Thank you,
I
David.
would thank the Finance Committee of David and Kay, Claudine, the staff, and especially Cindy. I know this is a huge effort, and it's wonderful to know that it's always just lined up so easily. Thank you. Next on the agenda is strategic discussion and reports. I'll start with government affairs. Thursday night, I believe, the town has a public presentation and meeting related to plans for their future of the town facilities. Claudine, Kay, and I will be tuned in and listening to that with an ear to what does that mean for the library. Excuse me. I know Claudine, I can't remember if we talked about this last month. You talked to an attorney to get a reading on our land use agreement, and you have now shared that with the town.
To be precise, I have informed them that we consulted with our attorney, and I did not forward a copy, and let them know that our intentions were information and preparation. And I went so far as to say, I just want to make sure as we move forward, it never appears that we're adversarial, but always looking at what is mutually beneficial, and especially for our patrons. So it went well, and John Landcamer said it was going to be great. And to have board members there, I think they really want to do the classic, which I really support, of saying, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? Okay, now we know what you think. We're going to go think some more. So it's only going to be an hour. It'll be interesting to see what comes of it.
It looks like you've shared the draft of their presentation. That's going to take a decent chunk of an hour.
Yeah, and to credit to John Landcamer, they shared with us.
Yeah, absolutely, which is wonderful.
what they're thinking and what they plan to present, and we'll see what the final version is on Thursday night.
So just so I'm clear, did you share with John the content of what the attorney told you, or simply that you had consulted?
I think I may have ended at, we've consulted to make sure our interests are cared for.
Got it. Okay.
But I'm happy to forward at any point, Lynn.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second thing from government affairs, committee assignments, and I'll be honest here, I'm not sure where John stands on talking to each of the trustees about their plans and desires for committees and participation next year. So I guess all I can say is if he hasn't talked to you, he will. And this will be on the agenda in December. So Finance Committee, anything else that we haven't already covered with the budget?
Nothing that we need to present to the board tonight. There's ongoing conversations on a few items. Cindy's been researching a possible insurance pool for some changes, but those are all will be presented down the road when a pertinent time is appropriate.
Great, thank you. Claudine, Director's Report.
Thanks, Lynn. I think the only highlight from me is the bit I put in, but I'll start by saying I just want to revisit with the board that what we have laid out with the staff and with you earlier this year was that the quarterly report was was about strategy and did we achieve outcomes and what's our progress towards those outcomes, and that the monthly administrative report is really Joanna, Claudine, and Cindy, and then I invite the other teams at the library if they have something they want to brag about. This is the place to brag about it. So I hope that if you have questions, I will do my best to answer for tech services, the CERC team, or program and outreach, just letting you know. So that's their time to brag. I would just want to, I was concerned as I was listening to my colleagues across the state, many of them saying, oh yeah, our numbers are really coming back. Boy, we're busy. And I thought, well, we're like a train chugging along back up the hill. but we sure haven't hit the other side. So Allison suggested that we just look at what our technical peers are, which are resort libraries, not rural libraries, not front range libraries, but libraries that are resort designated. So attached is to the board packet are their comparisons to 2019, not 2020. And in some things we are ahead and in some things we're behind, but it sure took the subjective, how are we doing out of it? I realize this is well in advance, but you all might remember that each year we close out our statistics. Everyone in the state, actually everyone in the country, every public library has until March 15th to submit it to the state library. And that data goes to the state, and then it goes a year later, it reaches the national level. So, there's a ton of apples to apples comparisons out there to the best of our ability. This is just a snapshot based around statistics as I asked it to share with the board. So Lynn, that might be my only highlight at this time, other than the good news that our library card swap has been not just a numeric success, but feels good. People are happy to come in and interact, and what is transactional can sometimes be a little human connection and connecting folks with other programs and services. So
Great.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one important question. How was bowling?
I know, shock of shocks, we lost. It's crazy. We lost against the rec district. But I think we did win the who had the most fun. And what I think I'll do is torment you guys with some photos that we
Please.
took. It was a really great night. I credit to the chamber for putting on something so goofball. I want to let you know, though, we are really decent people at the library. We did steal from our opponents their little trophies, just as a way to say, see you next year. So it was a successful night, but if you want to know who won, it wasn't us. Yeah.
Well, I happened to be in Thursday morning. I think it was before bowling, and the shirts were great.
Thank you.
So,
We are the Dewey Decimators. Thank you very much.
thank you, Claudine. Does anyone have other questions for Claudine? Okay.
Yeah, Claudine, I really appreciate the stats. I looked at it and it made me feel good. The circulation, we're almost there.
Yeah.
I think a couple of % off. And I look at some of the other districts and they were 20% or more off. So we might not have people coming in the door, but our circulation is coming back, and that's really good.
Thank you. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Kay. Annie, do you have anything from Friends and Foundation?
Yeah, I have a few things. Let's see. Natasha Alvande, who is an old board member, has moved back into town and she's rejoined the board. We're excited to have her back. The AmeriCorps Vista volunteer, we approved having one this month, and we look forward to interviewing potential candidates. The Cliffhanger will be having sales until the end of the year. November is military history and fiction, and December, I think, is Colorado Western and fiction and history. And hardcovers for $2 and paperback for $1. We just recently received a grant for $5,200 for the Library of Things from the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado. And over 1,000 letters went in the mail on November 1st for our year-end appeal. Colorado Gives Day is one of Colorado's largest one-day online giving events on Tuesday, December 7th, and features a 1 million plus incentive fund. So when the Library Foundation receives a donation on Colorado Gives Day, we will also receive a portion of that incentive fund, which increases the impact and the value of every dollar that's donated. That's kind of a great thing. And the MOU tasks for October and November, The library requests a transfer of approved funds from the Friends and Foundation, and we deliver the annual check to the library, including reimbursement of full year compensation for the director. That's it.
Great.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Annie. Anyone have questions? Thank you. The action item on the agenda is from the Policy Committee, revisions to the staff handbook and the volunteer handbook. Peter, I know I'll let you lead the discussion. Just a procedural thing. Do we want to take one at a time? And
Yeah.
do we need a motion and a second and then discuss
Oh,
it?
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so which one do you want to start with, Peter?
Handbook.
The staff handbook.
It's
Okay.
it's a long one. I assume everybody has a copy of it maybe in front of them, I hope. And what I'll do is just kind of walk through.
Hey,
Do
Pete,
we want a
could I-
motion first?
Say it again?
Can we have a motion and a second and then
Oh,
we'll walk
sorry.
through it? So if someone would like to move approval of the staff handbook, HR policies.
I'd like to
get a
move.
motion. Okay,
I'd like to move that we approve the employee handbook
great,
as presented to you in your packet.
great. Second,
I'll second that.
Second that.
I'll let Beth this time. Thanks, Beth. Okay, any discussion? So Peter, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, but I mean the volunteer one will be pretty quick, but the employee handbook, I think we owe it to Claudine and Cindy and Joanna, who have put in a ton of work. And I don't even have an idea of how long, but it's probably been months. To kind of discuss some of the major changes. I won't highlight. I'm going to go page by page, but I'll try to do it quickly. I won't highlight where they just had like wordsmithing or rephrasing stuff, but rather when they've made additions or subtractions from it, or they've gotten something from the Employers Council. But they did a really, really good job. And then John and I spent time. I know Beth looked at it as well. And frankly, I'm happy to put it to bed because it was tough. And I think unless you're an HR geek like I am, or you work with it every day like Claudine, Cindy, and Joanna do, it's pretty hard to get through. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. Is all I'm trying to say. A lot of good stuff.
Mhm.
So I'm on page. Let me see. I'm on page 6. And it's called Important Notice, just to get everybody there, and then we'll just kind of go through page by page. Some of them we'll just skip. But anyway, what I wanted to point on this, there was no changes actually, but I wanted to point out there was a couple of really important clauses in here that if you don't work with this stuff every day, you might have forgotten about, but that we are employment at will. The library is, which says, basically employees can leave anytime they want. We have the same rights. The library does to do the same, to terminate employment. And that this document that we're going to go through today isn't really an employment contract or anything like that. It's mainly as it says there, to acquaint our employees with the policies. So going down into business ethics, there was really no changes on page 7. Confidential information or conflict of interest. The first changes there is on page 8, employment of relatives. And so we added in there, some of this is from the Employer Council, talking about just broader language, really, adding on 2 paragraphs there, actually 2 small sentences there in employment of relatives. So it's not really, that was from the Employer Council, if I'm correct, if I'm thinking correctly. Visitors in the workplace or to the workplace. This is a whole new section. And it was put in there to, I think keep distractions from other, visitors being distracting to other workers and let it, noise and movement and things like that. So there's just some words in there around a policy to how to conduct yourself as an employee if you're having a visitor come to the workplace. But that's brand new. Page 9, we're down on patron services. They added a reference to "we're glad you're here," service standards to get more information. And a reference to an incident report. If there's a issue, that's about it there. Otherwise, the wording is the same. Let me see. Okay, going to page 10, still under, we're under political and advocacy activities. There's inserted was the employee expectations summary on politics and discrimination. So that's referenced there for employees to look at. And there's also some verbiage in there, that paragraph that starts, "while the library encourages open and constructive dialogue." You know, it's basically expectations around political activities or discussions in the workplace. Okay. Trying to keep that balanced and safe. Nothing on professionalism. Professional conduct, the first couple of sections are the same. Page 12, discipline and discharge. I'm on page 12. Okay, what was that? Just changes in wording. Okay, I'll skip over that. That's basically the same, just rephrased. Page 13, down under personal appearance. Personal appearance, there's references in there, trying to give people, you know, some direction on what's appropriate, how to dress. And it references mountain snappy dress code, and just elaborates on dress in that second paragraph that starts with an employee's attire while at work. So the rest is the same. I'm going through page 14, and 14 is clear. 15 is basically clear too, except for they just added the words personal under the heading of use of equipment and use of stationary and mail services. So that's pretty straightforward, just a title change. Going down into page 16. I think this came from the Employers Council too, but a lot more clarity in the second paragraph and the third paragraph on unconcealed weapons and concealed weapons. So they make it very clear the library's position on those two topics. And you can take that and read it at your leisure. Talks about permits and things like that. So, but the unconcealed weapons I thought was good. That was a good sentence in there. Workplace regulations, in good shape. That whole section going to 16, 17, and 18, all in good shape. No, not really any changes other than wordsmithing by the staff. Okay, pay practices. Okay, so page 19. Employee classifications, they put some work in with the help of the Employers Council again around defining the different classifications, exempt, non-exempt, especially, but full-time, part-time, minimal part-time, temporary, etc. So again, those are very clear, and everybody, whether they're exempt or non-exempt especially, will understand the distinction. I'll get into that in overtime as well. Which is next, page 20. Okay, so page 20 under overtime and compensatory time, paragraphs 2 and 3, and then the example I think Cindy did about overtime calculations and things like that. Again, this is just clarification as to who qualifies and how it's calculated. And there's an example in there. So that's well written and should be very clear to anybody who, as they go through orientation. But you'd be amazed how many people don't understand really, if they're eligible for overtime and stuff like that. By the way, in case you didn't know, I don't know what the state of Colorado does, but nationally, there are people in exempt jobs that they call them exempt jobs, and yet they're eligible for overtime because of the nature of their jobs. It's usually in accounting. That was just an FYI. Page 21 under paydays, the just new language related to the payroll system, the new payroll system. A lot of what you're seeing here under pay is probably direct, at least what I picked up, it's because of the questions that Cindy gets a lot about calculation of overtime and payroll systems and stuff like that. So this is just more additional wording around that. There was a pay for exempt and non-exempt employees on page 21. Again, clarification around the non-exempt, especially in this section. A non-exempt employee receives hourly wages and therefore blah, blah, blah. That paragraph there was important. Probably got a lot of questions about it. Next section was on 22, time reporting. And again, this is new wording based on their payroll system. Paychecks, payroll system. So, yeah, just added in there, new wording. Pay philosophy, there's reference in there to the library's compensation structure that employees can access. Page 23, all the same. 24 is good. 25 is good. On 26.
Hey, Pete,
Yeah.
I have a
Yep.
question
fire
on
away.
the accruals. Where did that come from? Because I look at the numbers and they're pretty generous.
The accruals, you on page 25? Or
Yeah,
accrued
vacation, and
Yeah.
then also as it applies to sick.
Yeah. Claudine, would you like to talk about, because I know you're considering some changes to that maybe going forward a year from now or so.
Correct.
Because it is lucrative, you're right, Kay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Pete. Kay, those numbers haven't changed in probably 5 or 7 years. So there's no change to those accrual numbers for vacation. And there's no change to the accrual numbers for sick.
Okay.
However, Pete was right to make that segue. We are talking to Lori Graves and one of her associates to look at leave. Cindy, this is similar to what we did last fall when there was a question about compensation, and Cindy and I thought, yeah, we'll just do a little field study with our colleagues and gather up that data and report it out. And we realized, wow, it's oranges, apples, and pears. So that's why we hired Lori for compensation. The same is true for leave.
Yeah.
We did the same during the process of the handbook to say, all right, what's the landscape now? Cindy, you're always welcome to publicly disagree with me. I believe it was apples, pears, and oranges, right? So we didn't change anything, Kay, because it ain't broken. But we'd like to know what's going on with our competitors for good employees. And then we'll have that information to you, we think, mid-year 2022.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think we need to look at it. I know some companies actually put it as a liability on their financial statements.
Vacation, yeah.
And accrual, it's if there's any certain number that take it all at one time.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, that is reported every year. It's calculated and reported.
On the financials as a liability?
Only at the end of the year in the audited financials, yes.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
not calculated monthly or.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's in the,
Yeah.
then, okay.
But that's something I'll be anxious to see too if we get an outside consultant involved, because this is one that's all over the board, and you can leave a lot of money on the table in terms of accruals and under vacation and sick leave as well. So I'm not sure. It's going to be a tough one to kind of posture with the employees if it changes, because my suspicion is that we're a little too liberal. But we'll see, when it comes back. Let me give you an example. I mean, that's better than ExxonMobil's policy when I was there. So
I've never seen anything this generous
yeah, I agree.
in my employment
Right.
either.
And I had neither, but it needs to be, if it stays anywhere near this, I think that needs to be really marketed well as a strong benefit for potential new employees and for maintaining or keeping people here, because they won't get any better on the other side of the grass is not greener on the other side of the fence. Okay, so I'm on accrued vacation, and I'm on page 26. The only change there was a sentence that was inserted at the top there that says, once an employee has accumulated the maximum hours, no additional vacation time will be accrued until they drop below the maximum. So that's an effort to obviously control it. I'm going into page 27 now. I'm under sick time. There was a change from midway down on page 27. They changed from 3 to 4 days consecutive sick days before they needed a doctor's statement. Okay, it used to be 3, now it's 4. Go ahead, Claudine, if I misrepresented that.
No, you're right on track, Pete. I wanted to make one significant recognition about our change of sick time, which is, even though we have fewer than 50 employees, the Estes Valley Library District has, for perhaps before my tenure, so at least 15 years, has comported with FMLA leave language as a way to be aspirational, the amount of time folks get off. But with the passing of the Colorado Healthy Families Workplace Act, we moved away from FMLA, again, not obligated, it was more aspirational. We're now, so whereas we were unable to achieve all that FMLA offers, we are able to exceed all that the Colorado Healthy Families Workplace Act asks. So Cindy, again, you can disagree, but it's not like we've changed very much. It's that the language within our policies now recognize state law, which we had to do. That was my main point.
Right.
Thanks, Pete. Sorry. I think that was important.
HFWA. So, so in addition to that, the same argument, there's a paragraph there that starts on page 27 to care for an employee's family members. So this is added in there. And that's also probably to keep in line with the state laws around healthy family protection acts. Let me see here. Yeah, okay. Bereavement. On page 28, bereavement, the only change that the staff came up with was adding in a clause about miscarriages, employee or partner miscarriage. So that's included now in the bereavement leave. And it was just simplified, right, Claudine? I mean, the whole bereavement leave there, I think it was a lot more detailed before, got into funeral arrangements and what if it's outside the state versus inside local and that kind of stuff. And this just made it nice and clean. Granted, up to 5 days, and that's something that they'll probably have to work with their supervisor to come to a mutual agreement on, but it's nice and clean now. Also on that same page 28, down under holidays, they removed, was it President's Day? I think it was. Removed that and exchanged it with a personal floating holiday. And there's a lot of rules, not a lot of rules, but there's guidance on page 29 about that. Floating holiday, approval in advance with the supervisor, that kind of thing, that floater holiday. And also what to do if the holiday occurs on an absence day too. So again, the movement to a floating holiday is fantastic. It gives the director and all the supervisors a lot of flexibility, but they also included in there some process steps that people have to take to do that. Jury duty on page 29. I don't think that was just cleaned up the language. Yeah, so that's basically the same. Voting, simplified that on page 30, the section on voting, reworded it. And the logic there being, most of the when the elections come up, it's pretty easy for our people to be able to vote. And it didn't have to be all that complicated. Mainly, it's just a discussion with a supervisor if they can't go before or after work about getting off. But that's something that can be agreed upon, and the supervisor has the flexibility to do that. Moving on, I'm on to page 31, down at the bottom, parental leave of absence. This was news to me, so I actually asked Claudine about this today, but you know, if a person is applying for parental leave, there's a provision in there, the last sentence, that says all available vacation is used at the beginning of the leave of absence. Then the remaining time of the 12-week period by state law is unpaid. So that's just clarifying it for people that they need to use vacation. They are eligible for up to 12 weeks unpaid leave, but the expectation is they'll exhaust their vacation first. All right, 32, we're getting close, I promise. Nothing on 32. 33, under benefits, insurance. A provision in there about a minimum of 30 hours per week to be eligible. That was an addition in there. And that's law. That was from the Employers Council, I think, suggestion. So that's all on that page, page 34. Okay, this has to do with training programs and seminars. And there was a statement, second sentence there on 34 added in about reporting back. So if somebody goes to training, there's an expectation that they will come back and brief their fellow staff members on the training program. So it's putting some accountability there, which I liked. Lessons learned, et cetera. At a minimum to the supervisor. I'm sure they can, the supervisor can include anyone else that would find some value from it. Tuition reimbursement on that same page. We're still on 34. Changed from, what was it, 3,500 to 4,000 per calendar year for tuition reimbursement. B as in boy or better for a grade to qualify, and that the employee will be reimbursed for 75% immediately after completing the course. This is the very last sentence on that page. And the remaining 25%, which is a retention thing, of the tuition reimbursement after 1 year of continuous employment after the completion of the course. So, I mean, it's not. I think you're going to find that not too many companies out there have tuition reimbursement. So this is another one of those policies that I think is a selling point for the jobs here. Anybody who's interested in going for advanced education will find this very reasonable. And it also protects the library from the standpoint of not putting out too much money and then having somebody take that coursework and go somewhere else. I'm on page 35, nothing on employment practices. 36 is clean. 37 under telecommuting. There's a paragraph in there that starts with employees who telecommute must comply. So this is a paragraph that was inserted in here around expectations of the employee if they are approved for telecommute. Okay. Otherwise, that section is pretty straightforward, nothing new. Claudine, did that come from Employee Council, or is that something you guys came up with, that employees who telecommute must comply, the expectations? Huh?
I'm sorry, Pete, I don't remember.
Okay.
Where it's been
It
long
sounded,
enough.
yeah, it sounded like Employers Council stuff to me, but which is good.
Cindy, do you recall?
I believe part of it was Employers Council and part we
Okay.
polled other libraries and
Right. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
took from their policies that the things that we liked.
Yep. Page 38. Thank you both. Unscheduled closure. There's a provision in there at the last sentence of that section. It says, in fairness to those who overcome transportation or other difficulties and report to work, this would be like on a bad snowstorm or something like that. In fairness to the people who do make it in, without punishing the ones who couldn't make it in, necessarily. The library will deduct a day of vacation per day for those who do not come in. So it gives the flexibility for the person, if they don't feel safe driving, to not come in, but it also uses a day of vacation.
Pete, I feel compelled to say, we've
Yeah.
always operated that way. It's
Good.
just written down now.
Right, right. All right, I'm in technology. I'm going to page 39, everything clear through 39. Page 40 under telephone, cell phones, and mobile devices. What was that? That was pretty.
Oh, we had language that was,
Oh, yeah.
go ahead.
No. I'm just saying they did remove a clause in there that was in there about driving and using cell phones at the same time, which they don't give cell phones out in the library. So it was kind of not
That
necessary.
the wording's still there.
Is it?
The very last sentence on that page.
Yep, you're right. Good point.
Isn't that a good thing to have?
That's why I called Claudine today. I was wondering why, and I didn't even notice that it wasn't taken out. What do you think,
Yeah.
Claudine?
I think we missed it.
I'm not sure I understand why you want to take it out.
Because it does say while on library business, it's
Yeah.
not just general driving.
Yeah, I have to admit, Kay, I don't remember now. We could go to the original source. I think the original language, as I remember it, was very paternalistic about telling people how to behave with cell phones that had no bearing on library time and the fact that we're not offering them the cell phone. So I think that leaving it in, I don't remember why we did, I have to be honest.
I think it might, even if they're using their personal cell phone,
For library
if they're
business.
on library business, and let's say they're on the phone and they have an accident, is there a liability to the library?
Remember hearing that. It's a really excellent question from an insurance-minded person, Kay. That may well have been the reason. I guess we are pretty, when it comes to I don't have a strong answer on this one. I think we say, you can't use email for anything other than library business.
Uh-huh.
You can't use this for other than library business. But when you're on your cell phone for library business, don't be stupid. I mean, I guess I'm not being glib, is the language to protect us in some way. I would have to look, but I'd be happy to, Kay, to check.
Well, I think it's a good thing to keep in there, but
I had Kay. I mean, I agree with you. I had actually asked Claudine that same question this afternoon because I thought it was out because I'd looked at another
thought it was
version,
too.
I guess, and I thought it was out. So I was asking what was the logic, the reasoning in that. So, I mean, Claudine, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
That's
I would think that leaving it in there would be great. Just the way it is.
No problem, of course. Yeah.
There's no downside.
It's your policy.
I was interested though that it's only specific to texting, the way that language reads now.
it says using a cell phone or device to text. It
Right.
says cell
But you
phone
can,
or.
so it says you can call.
No, it says prohibited.
It's prohibited from using a
phone.
cell phone or other device to text while driving. But yeah, it should just be using a cell phone, really.
Or a device.
Or device, yeah.
But
Love
so
it.
it would cover
Yeah.
both calls and I read it using a cell phone to text or other device to text, which left it.
Okay.
That's what I hear. That's what I read too, Lynn. It doesn't say about calling.
Yeah, we can clean that up, can't we? I think that's a minor thing we can do.
I'll remind everyone that the board owns all of these policies. Employers Council they act as our advisors.
Right.
Sometimes they give us language, and Cindy can attest that we say, I'm sorry, we're not sure what you mean. And that's from their attorney. So this has been vetted by their HR consultant and by their attorney. And like an attorney's advice, you can take it or leave it. So I'm not advising you to be callous about it, but I am saying this is yours to write as you see fit.
I mean,
Go ahead, Lynn.
do we want to prohibit both texting and calling while somebody is driving on library business? Or are we just prohibiting texting?
No, I don't think that wasn't the intent. You're right, Lynn.
To
The
prohibit
intent was
both.
calling and texting. Use of cell phone, period.
So it would be removing or other device to text. We're simply
Yes.
saying prohibited from using a cell phone while driving.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with that.
It might need to be clarified because you do use your cell phone for
That's
directions.
true.
So I think
Good
we want
point.
to make sure we leave in there the calling and texting.
May I suggest employees are prohibited from texting while driving on library business?
I think calls too.
Calls. Yeah.
Of course, some people have, I
Yeah.
don't, but some people have
Hands-free.
cars that are
Hands-free.
hands-free,
Right,
but
right.
it's, I imagine it's an insurance point, Kay. It's about protecting them and us, right?
Right. And I'm sure there's state laws that have some limitation on both of these things too, but I don't think it's a bad thing to be more restrictive.
Cindy, can I ask you a favor while the board is thinking and deliberating and Pete's also reviewing? Could you go back to the original draft that Employers Council sent to us for that section? And then you can read it out and we can see if somehow in our 50 iterations of this, we bungled Frankenstein the language in some way. And Kay, that's just my effort in saying, I bet there's a clean way of saying this. I bet it's based on the law. And I bet we can get this policy approved with this finalized. It just might take us a few minutes to get there.
Okay.
Okay, so can we circle back to that, Pete?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks, Lynn.
And Kay, like I said, I thought about it completely, and that's why I asked the question this afternoon. Why did it come out? So we're on the same page. Lastly, on page 41, this is just a new employer council about data disposal. That whole section is new. So it's about protecting personal identifying information and gave you some examples there. And then when they are no longer needed, properly disposed, shredded, whatever, erase, so that personal identification information is not out there longer than is absolutely necessary for the library to use. So that's it in that one. There's an acknowledgement at the end, of course, for the employee to sign. That's pretty much the 40-something pages of the employee handbook.
Thank you. That's a huge amount of work in all of that.
No, yeah, I mean, I
Lots of.
I don't know how they
Nice,
got-
nice stretch, Pete.
I don't know how. I mean, I would not want to create one of these from scratch. And I actually don't even know how that Cindy and Joanna and Claudine actually found the time to work on this with just their normal work.
Yeah.
The everyday normal week. It's a massive undertaking. And the Employers Council too gave them a lot of guidance. So that's great. So that's it on the handbook.
Okay, so on the handbook, we still have that question on page
Yes.
40. Can we set aside that vote, go through the volunteer handbook
yeah.
and come back and then vote on both? So the second to be reviewed is the volunteer handbook. So we need a motion to approve that.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the volunteer handbook, that the Board of Trustees approves the volunteer handbook as presented.
Thank you, Pete. A second?
I would second that.
Thank you, Beth. Discussion? Pete, I'll let you take it again.
Again, this is very straightforward. There's minor changes to it, and I'll cover those pretty quickly, and we'll be done with these two policies. But it starts off with a note to volunteers from Claudine. That's no changes there. Under mission, vision, and values on page 3, they made changes to this section so that the values that are mentioned, the 5 values, are aligned with what's out on the website. Simple as that. The wording and everything should be identical now. Volunteer involvement, okay, which is on page 4 under responsibilities. Okay, let me see. Okay, all we did, we didn't do much there. It was just reworded. There wasn't any changes of substance in that section. Page 5, background checks. It used to say, it used to be interviews and background checks. Now it's just background checks. So very, very minor on page 5. Same thing on page 6, where principles of patron service. It used to just be patron service, and that they added in principles of in the title. So pretty straightforward stuff. Otherwise, it didn't change. Moving to page 7 on conduct and ethics. Under conflict resolution, there is in that last sentence or two, second paragraph, they reference restorative justice practices are used whenever possible, which is great. And that's about it on that. Under dress code, further down, there's a infographic that employees can click on. Again, mountain snappy dress code, same as in that other policy. So that's pretty much it. There is a section now that's new. This was added, relatives as volunteers. So that's very short, but that section was added in. And it has to do with not reporting to a relation. As should not be supervised or evaluated by a relative. Same as our normal employee handbook. Okay, and then under termination of service on page 9, there was a sentence added in there at the end. Volunteers are welcome to reapply at any time. This is under termination of service, so that's new. Safety and security on page 10. Signing in, volunteers need to sign in when they arrive and when they leave. There's a record of that. There was just an addition in this section about the number of hours is automatically recorded. Just further clarification. This came up just a few minutes ago, but under liability coverage, go ahead. Somebody had a question? Nope. Okay. Okay, so this talks, that sentence there under liability coverage that starts with, if a volunteer has duties which involve driving, in most cases, the library insurance will cover any medical claims resulting from the accident, but any auto claims is on their own personal auto coverage. So that sentence is new. Page 11, practical information. Okay, just under parking, a clause in there referring volunteers to the town website for information about permits and paid parking, since there's such limited parking right now at the library. So it just refers them to that website. Again, also on holiday closures, we didn't list it anymore, just ask them to check the website for holiday closures. Okay. Very straightforward. This one's that's it. This one, the handbook was obviously it was done very well the last time because there was very few changes this time to the volunteer handbook. And that's it. I don't know if we have an answer on that other question about the handbook, but is there any comments or questions about the volunteer handbook changes?
Should we that's great. Thank you, Peter.
Mhm.
Should we just vote on the volunteer handbook, wrap
Yeah.
that up, and then we can circle back?
Sounds good.
So all in favor of approving the volunteer handbook as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Okay, volunteer handbook is approved as presented. Are we ready to circle back to the question from page 40?
Yes, Lynn. Pete, Joanna offered the following sentence.
Okay.
While driving on library business, employees are prohibited from using their cell phones to make calls or to text.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This might be silly, but when would library employees driving and needing to call or text? Because I'm thinking if you're delivering something to someone, you might actually need to call them on the phone? Or is there a time? I'm just wondering, are we putting something in place that is actually a function that's needed? I don't want to just be smart about that.
I'd like to answer, Beth, but no, it's okay. I think we're in the weeds in a place that matters. I think this is implying you need to pull over.
Pull over, yeah.
Got it.
And it sends, to me, it sends a message that, you know, we're obviously concerned about it. You know, that kind of practice of driving while you're texting, and which we see all the time, people driving down the street, and we don't want to, I think it needs to be added in and left in, and I like that sentence. I'm fine with that.
Would you, anyone need me to read it again? I think it is a good
Yes,
conclusion.
please.
Okay. While driving on library business, employees are prohibited from using their cell phones to make calls or to text. David?
Claudine, I will say that that is very clear, but it could possibly, I'm just going to throw this out, are prohibited to use communication devices while driving, because there are more things than cell phones. There's tablets, there's all kinds of other ways to communicate. Now, granted, most people don't have a tablet out while they're driving, but I just throw that out for consideration.
So you're suggesting change cell phone to communication device.
Or some other equivalent of
Technical
generic.
device, something like that.
And I may be getting too down in the weeds, but that's the way I phrased in my head.
The sentence as it is in what's in the packet uses the phrase a cell phone or other device.
And that would be
Is that-
generic enough too. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be a good addition. Yeah.
So it would read, while driving on library business, employees are prohibited from using their cell phones or other communication devices to make calls or to text.
Yeah.
I think that covers it better myself, but that's.
Any other comments on that?
Lynn, we didn't follow exact Robert's rules here. It is okay that there have been amendments to the proposed policy. But what I do know about Robert's rules is if that's how we always do it, that's okay to do it, right? So I do think it would be helpful for there to be an acknowledgement of an addendum to the policy as presented.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I think I've got that. So what we're going to do, and tell me if I'm doing this wrong by Roberts, is take a vote on the policy that Pete's presented with the amendment to that last sentence on page 40, changing that out to what the last version that Claudine just read to us.
That is what I'm suggesting, Lynn,
Okay.
because that's how it's been done before. So it's ethically consistent.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So we'll take a vote on that amended policy for the employee handbook. All in favor of approving the handbook with that amendment on page 40, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Great. So with that amendment, that handbook is also approved. And again, thank you to everybody who's put in a
Aye.
huge amount of work on these. And hopefully the next time around it is easier.
Joanna and Cindy get, I think they each carried 40 pounds. How about that?
Thank you.
Maybe 45. So thank you to them very much. Pete, I know you asked a lot of questions and had us rethink a few things. Thank you for the process. Thank you, board. These, just as a Pete, you had asked about this too. These will be cleaned up and made a little bit more palatable before they're passed out. So just so you know, we didn't bother to make them pretty until they were approved, but they will be clean for everybody to sign. These are all signed before January 1. And to be clear, this is approved today to be implemented on January 1 of 2022.
Great.
I know it doesn't have to be that way, but that's how we wrote it on the cover. And Cindy, let's be honest, we did that because we thought there would be changes to the leave policy. We did not make any changes that have, Cindy, can you confirm this for me? We didn't make changes to this policy that will have any changes that require anything on the administrative side. Is there any reason this couldn't be effective immediately?
Not coming to mind immediately, no.
Yeah.
Um,
We know when leave things are changed, it's significant enough to delay approval. But
and leave changes would be good to have a specific, an easy cutoff date for payroll purposes.
and
But
those
other than that, I can't think of anything that would
Okay.
prohibit us.
So I do want to let you know, you've approved a policy that says effective January 1, 2022. I saw a few expressions. I just want to make sure this isn't a problem for anyone on the board.
Well, what if you had to, I think we owe it to the employees to brief them on this, and that's going
Right.
to take some time, right?
Mhm.
Which is why I was okay with January 1, because I think it gave you to the end of the year to know what the changes are for 2022. And also to let them know that there could be some changes in 2022 for 2023.
Yes.
Um,
Okay. Just wanted to
yeah,
make sure everything was crystal.
yeah.
So we'll wait till January 1. You okay with that, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay. All thank you very much. This is, of course, the longest policy by 30 pages.
And I'm sure Beth probably gave you a lot of feedback too. She, even if from coming to meetings and stuff, conflicts, but I know you're getting feedback electronically from others as well, including Beth. So anyway, it's a big, I'm sure they're happy that it's been approved.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Just briefly, upcoming meetings, executive session, December 2nd, which will be about Claudine's performance review. And I believe you'll have something out to us
Tomorrow,
shortly.
Lynn, I'll be sending you my self-evaluation and then the actual document that you all will fill out. Plus, I'll attach my job description and the strategic plan and the values, because I don't think you had enough reading. And you'll look at all of that as the reading will take most of the time. The evaluation is actually fairly simple, thanks to Joanna. So all of that will go out tomorrow, Lynn.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And
Oh,
Lynn,
there's one
I
more thing.
apologize. I apologize for keeping us over, but it won't happen again because this is, as Claudine said, by far the longest policy to get through. So.
No, that's time well spent to get it done and reviewed. That's great.
I forgot to mention, Lynn, John did ask, once I send that out to you tomorrow, that if everyone could return their evaluations to John before Thanksgiving. So I'll send that, I'll attach that to the email, but like publicly stating he would like to have that back from you before Thanksgiving so that it can be collated and presented during the executive session.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you. The next regular Board of Trustees meeting, Monday, December 13th, which is a week earlier than it would typically be, but that meets our budget deadlines. The library is closed Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving. And Annie talked about Colorado Gives Day, which we shouldn't forget, which is December 7th. Does anyone have anything else to bring up to the meeting? Great. Thank you, everyone.